A new-to-me bag that's actually been around for quite some time. As I understand it, it's actually part of Maxpedition's original line from back in 2003, is the Falcon-II. I have dabbled with a variety of bags over the years, some tactical looking more like this one, some of them a little bit more urban, hiking bags, etc. And this one has an interesting combination of things that I think it's well suited for. Bared talking about. In particular, I think it's really well set up as a trail bag as well as a get-home bag, and some of the things that makes it good at being a trail bag carry over really nicely into a get-home type of scenario. You could certainly use this as an EDC bag as well if you wanted to. One of the first things I did with this bag when I first got it was to take it out on a trail. I think we went about 3 or 4 miles, so it wasn't a super long hike, but it was definitely long enough that when I've taken other bags on a similar walk, if they were going to be uncomfortable, that came out and it was pretty clear why, what things were missing. A couple of the things that I appreciate about this bag right off the bat are the straps are nice and soft. They have a good amount of cushiness without being overly thick and hard to move around, which I appreciate. I've had bags with thicker straps, but I don't necessarily know that that always translated to greater comfort, and the maneuverability of these are nice. And the fact that this bag comes with built-in waist strap. The main other bag in my collection currently, in which I even have a waist strap, is a VanQuest Ibex 26, I believe. Now, I like that pack and it carries well, but it is a big, heavy pack for just a day hike. I've not had a waist strap on a bag this small before, which is really nice actually. When I took it out on that trail, it alleviated a ton of weight off my shoulders. I didn't have my bag packed out super heavy, admittedly, but I've had it at a similar weight like that before, and the yoke system of the 511 Rush 12 that I've also used on trails quite a bit. Some people love that yoke system. I don't always care for it myself. I don't feel like it is always super comfortable in the middle of my shoulders, and I didn't feel any of that discomfort with this pack, and probably largely to do with the waist strap that it has. And of course, it also has an adjustable sternum strap that you can use as well. For hikes, I consider that a must-have. I think this pack strikes a nice balance of being large enough to carry plenty of things that would be useful in the wilderness, especially if you were going for a pretty long hike where you were going to be gone the entire afternoon. You're not worried that you're out of space using this bag, but nor is it overly heavy. On some of my bigger hiking bags, I have occasionally felt like, yes, they carry really nice, but the bag itself is like 4 or 5 pounds, and that's just, it wears on you for sure. I've been in Hanging Rock State Park, and when I've gone on some of their longer 5 and 6 mile trails, it has really fatigued me at the end of that kind of hike with some of those heavier bags. So I appreciate that about this one. I'll walk through some of its features and compartments and just give you a demonstration of some of what I have it loaded out with. This is not meant to be a comprehensive get-home bag kind of thing. That would be a separate video, but I do have certain things loaded up in here just to serve as a demonstration of how you might load it up if you were going to use it for that type of thing. So to start off with, you just have a dump pouch up here. I don't have anything special in there at the moment. This is just some basic EDC type stuff, but would be useful in that kind of scenario. No organization in here, so it's really good for throwing your sunglasses case and stuff like that, so it's real easy to get in and out of. And this front pouch here is pretty typical admin compartment. You can have some pens, some Sharpies. I like to have a scour pad. That's useful for all kinds of things. Sometimes if I've used my knife to cut something where it's got like a residue that's stuck on the blade, this can help to scrub some of that off, and different things like that. I got wipes and hand sanitizer down in there. Again, that's a little bit more EDC slanted. Where I have found the organization of this helpful is it has a middle compartment, and that's where I have focused this bag a bit more on the get-home nature. To my mind, get-home is different from a bug-out bag in the sense that a bug-out bag might be assuming I've got to have everything that I would need to survive for some several days or extended period of time in the wilderness. A get-home bag is more focused on, I'm going to bring this with me when I go out places, and if for whatever reason I have to abandon my vehicle or I'm in a tough situation where I have an unusual way that I have to get home to my family, Does this have enough stuff to help me do that without being so heavy that, once again, it's creating fatigue? Especially if you're 5, 10, 20 miles from home, that walk is going to be at least 10 hours. Is this a bag that's light enough that you could do that? So in here, I'm trying to cover the basics. I've got this little Altoids tin that I put in most of my bags. I've got it set up as a little tinder box. In here is a magnifying glass as one way in a pinch to try to create a fire. I've got some birthday candles. The idea behind these is just you could light it and set them in something. It would burn long enough that if your wood was slightly damp or you didn't have a lot of really good kindling, it would give you something to keep a small flame going long enough to hopefully ignite something bigger. Same idea with the duct tape here. And then I've of course got a lighter with some more duct tape on it. I've got matches, and I've got some cotton swabs soaked in petroleum jelly. Those make awesome kindling. I've used those even at home just to get campfire started on my property. That works really well. This is something featured in a lot of people's videos. I don't normally carry this around in an EDC bag, but if it's a bag that I might have loaded out more for a get-home scenario in mind, a Silcock key, very useful if I'm near a downtown area or where there's some commercial buildings in a pinch. If you had to, try to access some of the public water sources. That can be helpful in an emergency scenario, and these pair nicely with that. These are just water purification tablets. That allows you to take either that kind of municipal water or something you found in a stream, etc., and be able to use it. I've redundantly got the Sawyer Mini. I have actually used this in a stream and Hanging Rock with my son. He got a real kick out of being able to just drink straight from the river. These work well. And I've got it in a baggie here just because the plastic on this scuffs really easily, so I like to keep that a little nicer. And then I've just got some Gorilla Tape, good way to, if a fabric rips, if something on this pack were to rip, that could, in a pinch, just put something back together and keep it going long enough to get you back home. And then paracord, that's sort of self-explanatory. So I feel like in this compartment alone, you've got a whole bunch of things, even a signal mirror, and I always carry ear protection just in case there's loud sirens or something else going on that's really loud and you want to kind of protect your hearing. I've got enough in this compartment alone to cover basic contingencies. You could easily stuff a tarp or a blanket or something in this one or the next compartment that's a little bigger that I'll show you to be fully decked out. Now this is the compartment that I don't have as full, but I do have a couple of pouches in here. This is a good example of where this big open area is good for just kits, standalone, that you might make. You might have a medical supplies kit, a small tools kit. I've got my Leatherman Surge in here. I don't know that I would always carry this in a backpack because I'm the kind of person who usually would have the Surge on my person, so I wouldn't need it in the pack, but this is a great place to put that. And then you've got, in the back here, a zip pouch that's kind of a generous size for snack bars is what I often put in stuff like this, and you've got the same thing on the other side here. This one doesn't zip, but it goes almost the full height down, and this, as you can see, will clamshell completely open, which is great for loading it and accessing stuff. I found that that was super useful on a hike to stuff spare jackets, snacks, have a shopping bag with us to store our trash, you know, and save it to the end of the hike, etc. And it also has, in the back here, a plate. I've seen people in other videos talk about CCW or armor plates. You could probably do something like that. You can also store a water bladder in here, and more on that in a second. What I normally put in back compartments like these in bags I have are these. That's sort of my really emergency pouch. This has an emergency poncho and one of those little Mylar blankets in a pinch. And I also always have a map of the state that I'm in, just with the assumption that if cell service and your ability to use regular maps kind of went down, presumably I'm somewhere in my own state, I could use this map to kind of chart some kind of a route to get home. It's not very heavy and it's nice and flat, so these things work well in these back compartments. You don't feel it on your back when you carry the bag around, and it's just nice to know that you have those. The Mylar blanket in a pinch. If you couldn't make it all the way home in one shot in a get-home scenario and you had to spend the night somewhere, That's nice to have, to know that you could stay warm, especially if you weren't able to construct a whole shelter and you didn't want to have a fire because it might draw attention to you or whatever the reason is. Now, as you can see on the outside, the PALS webbing is pretty generous. You have it along both parts of the front. You have it on the side here. As you can see, I've got a collapsible water bottle holder. I like this because when you're not using it, it can collapse down. It's a little misaligned here. It can collapse down very flat against the bag, but it can expand to hold up to a 32-ounce bottle. And I've got a similar scenario on this side just to create some visual balance. This bag being a little bit slenderer than some that I've had, I like that for a get-home type scenario, because if you had to squeeze through tight doorways, if you were in the wilderness squeezing between trees and stuff, it's less likely to get snagged on stuff. Slimmer silhouette, but it does mean it's slightly more susceptible to toppling to one side if you don't keep the balance on stuff that you've got on the outside. So just keep that in mind when you're loading it up. It's got straps like this that you can use to help cinch everything down, and it's got similar straps on the side here that you can tighten things down. As you can see, I have it rubber banded up just so that there's not a ton of extra strap everywhere. Same deal for the waist strap. Super useful to have them. I've got the end of it just stuck in a little zip tie there. There it is when it's off. So I love that you can have the waist strap readily available when you need it, and then I've kind of just rigged myself up something basic to kind of hold it just so that it's not all over the place when I don't need it. And then it carries a little bit more like a regular backpack. I think that's great. And you've got plenty of attachment points down the strap here. As you can see, I've got on a little loop here an emergency whistle that tucks nicely into this so that it's not flopping around all over the place while I'm walking, but that if I were to fall or get stuck on something and needed to whistle, it's right there. I don't want to have to go digging in the pack for that if I were in a scenario where I needed it. That's probably less useful for a get-home scenario, but definitely as a trail bag, really nice to have. And I like that you could clip your keys or stuff like that to this. Probably the only mildly troublesome aspect of this bag that I ran into in the last week while I was checking it out is the fact that it can take a water bladder. It has this little Velcro thing on the top that has a hole that goes down into that compartment that you could take your hose through. But the thing is, when you Velcro that shut, you can see that the bag has a tendency to kind of puff up. When I'm trying to grab this, if you grab it from the back, that's not a big deal because you can get your fingers down in there. But quite often I'm in a scenario where the bag is like this and I want to get my hand in. My fingers always run into that part there. So you have to go out of your way to like push that down so that you can get your fingers into the handle. As a minor point of criticism, that could be done a little better, I suppose. That's something that came to play several times while I was going to lift this pack up. Otherwise, the grab handle is nicely made and it's rounded nicely and reinforced, so it's comfortable in the hand to just lift this up and carry it around. And I do like that about it. There obviously are larger bags out there if you were going to do backpacking for several days and stuff like that. But like I said, I think this is a really nice size for a day hike. You could definitely use it as an EDC bag. It's got plenty of organization for that and the ability to attach whatever extra pouches or things like that onto here. Really nice. There's a lot of little considerations like loops here to attach keys or stuff like that. For the most part, I think this is a really well executed and well built brand. It's pretty much what you would expect if you've ever used something from Maxpedition before. And it's a lot of straps. If you just want to use it as an EDC bag, I would definitely recommend kind of tying them up so they're not all over the place. But I do like that you have them because other EDC bags like this, like the 511 Rush 12 that I mentioned, does not have a waist strap. It doesn't have some of these other considerations. And so that kind of makes this one, comparatively for those types of scenarios, this is a much better trail bag, I think. It's way more comfortable to carry, and I really appreciate that about this. So I appreciate Maxpedition for sending this bag out to me just to check out and tell everyone about. It's been around for a long time, but it's not one that I've ever used before, and for some of you that haven't played with or seen this one yet, I hope this was helpful as sort of an overview and to give you an idea of some of the things, like I said, that I feel this executes well and would be well suited for versus your typical EDC bag that has some of this stuff. Go ahead and ask questions down below if there's something that I didn't fully cover or you wanted a little bit more detail about, and otherwise, I will keep using this and maybe make some follow-up content of loadouts that I perfect a little bit further. I always like to talk through that. If you've had a bag similar to this and you have personal choices that you would make on stuff you would carry in a get home or a trail scenario, throw that below too. I always love gathering other people's perspectives on this kind of stuff. And otherwise, guys, appreciate you. I'll catch you in the next one.